Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody for coming. I'm Steve Goldman. I'm the director of the Center for Free Enterprise, and I'm going to announce our next two events for the center. They will be here at 4:30. The first one is going to be on Tuesday, February 13th, and we're doing this jointly with the Yum Center for Global Finance and Excellence. And on that day, we're going to have CEO of Lafayette Square, Damian Dwin, and Yum Head of Global Franchising, Wanda Williams, discussing investing in communities where it makes a difference. And then on April 2nd, we're bringing back Yeonmi Park. We're doing this jointly with the Young Americas Foundation. Yeonmi is a North Korean defector and a human rights activist. She has a really great story. Last time she was here, we had more than 500 people show up. You should be one of them this time. It's a great story. You should definitely come if you can. Quick note, if you're here for extra credit, reading group, participation, Cardinal Flight, we're going to have a QR code available at the end. It'll be going out the door. You can take a picture of that with your camera, fill out the survey. If you need to get credit, make sure you fill out all the information on the survey, particularly your name and the class it's for. And if you're here just for hearing things, also fill out the survey and tell us what you thought. So I've got students who tell me that when they graduate, they want to help others. And I think some of them don't realize that if they're in business, they are helping others. This is what businesses do. You make people's lives better, and people give you money for that when you make their lives better. And so we are all entrepreneurs searching for fulfilling ways to solve problems in the world in our own little ways. And we help each other through business. And so we realize that. And our talk today is going to be how we help people through business, and it's going to be in terms of revitalizing downtown. And so we're fortunate to have a good panel, and I'm going to have our Dean, Jeff Guan, introduce the panelists now.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman, and thank you, Center for Free Enterprise, for hosting today's panel. And I want to use this occasion to share with you that we are starting a new minor in real estate, and that has been made possible by a generous gift from LDG and its co-principal, Chris Dischinger. And Chris, of course, is also an alum. And this is part of a strategy of the college business to co-design and co-deliver academic innovations. So we've done that with the franchise program, the distilled spirits program, and the data science program. And now we're continuing that strategy with this real estate minor program. And we're really excited. We're offering 3 classes this semester, and the average number of students in those classes is close to 20 students, which I think is great. So we're off to a great start. And so now on to today's event. I would like to introduce our moderator, David Hardy. And David is the managing director of CBRE, and that's the world's largest commercial and real estate services and investment firm. And under the direction of David, and CBRE Louisville is the Kentucky's largest commercial real estate services firm. And David Hardy has been the director since 2005, while also serving as player and coach for the office properties division. David has been brokering office properties and advising clients in the Louisville market since 1988, working with owners and tenants throughout the market. David, I didn't. You don't look like you have that many years of experience, and so David has been involved in lease transactions on behalf of many of Louisville's most prominent companies and office properties. Under David's leadership, CBRE Louisville was named one of Louisville's fastest growing companies in 2004, 2006, 2007, and 2008. CBRE Louisville has been ranked as the #1 commercial real estate firm by Louisville Business First for the past 12 years. Thank you, David, for agreeing to moderate today's panel. David?
My pleasure, Dean. Thank you all for joining us. This is going to be a great talk. Obviously a very hot topic across the country as the pandemic has wreaked havoc on downtowns everywhere, and Louisville is no exception, as we've seen our head count on the sidewalks and in the office buildings and in the cafes and in the retail really dwindle. So it's my pleasure to be here with this great panel to talk about this topic and see what we can learn from each other. I'll let them introduce themselves.
I hope everybody's doing well tonight. I am the CEO of Weyland Ventures. We're an urban real estate development, property and asset management company founded in Louisville, based in downtown Louisville. We now do work around the Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio region. We run the gamut from a use perspective. We have everything from new construction multifamily, lots of historic projects, mixed use, multifamily, condo, office. We actually, we were the developers responsible for the Mercury Ballroom, so we have a music venue in downtown Louisville. So we really run that gamut. So when we're going into an area of the city, we are often looking at how do you take a phased development approach to revitalize an area that hasn't seen investment in 10, 20 years, and how do you bring it back so that it really has that life to it in a 24/7 kind of way. So that's our philosophy, and we started, company was founded by my father back in the mid-90s. His first project as an architect turned real estate developer was to bring Louisville Slugger Bat Factory from southern Indiana down onto Main Street. So for some context, at that point in downtown Louisville, West Main Street, where you now have a very thriving part of downtown, at that point had 600,000 square feet of vacant space. So you can see where downtown's come in that 30 years. It's taken some step backwards in the last few years, and we got to push it forward to a new place. But we have come a long way from where we were even in the 90s.
Absolutely. Chris?
Chris Dischinger, I'm co-founder of LDG Development. We're primarily a multifamily developer, a lot of affordable housing. We've developed about 25,000 units kind of through the southeast and southwest, really since 2002. The company goes back to 1994 when we started out doing a lot of single family rentals and that kind of thing. And so over the years, we've done a number of things. We have about 3 million square foot of industrial. We're also developing at this point. But our primary day job has been new construction, multifamily. But we've recently relocated our headquarters from Old Louisville to downtown. We've tried to make a commitment to being downtown. In addition to that, we've accumulated about 15 acres in the downtown market to be developed, and we have a property, 343 unit property under construction in the hospital district today.
Great. Before we move on from Chris, Dean Guan mentioned Chris and the seed money for the real estate program. I think we should hold it. It's great. Colin?
I'm Colin Underhill, and I am the founder of Pluris Real Estate. We are a boutique, small-scale real estate developer and operator based here in Louisville. We primarily look to work in the asset class of retail, multifamily, and office properties. Our passion is to bring the live, work, play together. So when we can, we like to bring at least two of those together. It plays well within the lifestyle that people have developed over the years, and making your life more convenient and having more things at your fingertips, and being close to work and being close to the amenities of life. Couple signature projects here in Louisville that we've been involved with would be Germantown Mill Lofts. We worked with the University of Louisville to make that project possible, just a couple blocks away from here. In the retail and office sector, Westport Village, which is a suburban lifestyle retail center. Our passion is for Louisville. This is where we're located. We do have projects in Dallas, Orlando, New York City, Dayton, and here. But we love Louisville. And the key to a good Louisville is to have a really strong urban core. Your city's only as good as the urban core is, and it has to be strong and it has to be good. So we have a big passion for making that happen and making that possible where and when we can.
Great. Thank you, guys. I think one of the places I wanted to start here, I want to set the table for what we're really talking about. Everyone in this room may have a slightly different opinion of what the downtown is. What are the boundaries of downtown? And so I'll share a little bit about what we see from the office market, the way it's been tracked historically, and some of the information stats that are pertained by the city. It's typically been from more or less 1st to 9th Street and River Road to just south of Broadway. The downtown Louisville Management District has supplemental services in an area that's about that size, maybe a little bit wider on the north end of downtown, goes in towards Portland, and then it goes narrows down a little bit as it gets to Broadway. Now, there's a lot of surrounding neighborhoods that we'll talk about a little bit in our question and answer here with New Lou. We're not going to get into Butchertown, but you've got areas just to the west of the downtown, just to the south of downtown with Sobro as you get into U of L. But I think our primary focus is the core of downtown today. But some of this group's projects extend into these surrounding neighborhoods as well. What I'd like to start off as well is just this is a business school and this is a business panel. You know, what's the business environment feel like in terms of the demand for the product or services that you're trying to sell in the downtown and surrounding areas? I'd like each of you all to address that question.
Sure. It's an interesting time downtown. I've spent a lot of the last few weeks meeting with bankers, because if you're in real estate development, you gotta know what the bankers are going to give you money for. And there is an interesting dynamic as far as what they're seeing that they will lend for. We are still very hot on hospitality with the increase in bourbon tourism and the convention center kind of hitting pre-pandemic numbers and then growing beyond that in 2024. We see that to continue being a hot area. If you talk to our head of the convention center, you know, we need 5,000 to 10,000 more rooms in the Jefferson County area, which is fantastic. A lot of people think we're overbuilt. We are not, if you look at our peer cities. So, you know, we're excited about that. Banks are still reticent about hospitality, so there's a bit of a mismatch there. Multifamily, I think there's a lot of opportunity. If you look at our peer cities, we never built the residential in our urban core that they did in Indianapolis and Cincinnati and other locations. I think that's one of the things that's holding downtown back right now. And so trying to figure out how to move those multifamily projects forward in a way from affordable all the way up to market rate. We need a little bit of everything to get those units online, get more people downtown on a regular basis, living, stable base, which then helps to drive kind of that restaurant and retail mix that I think everybody who's downtown is looking for.
The only thing I'd probably add to that is, you know, as we can increase density, if we get more housing downtown, I think it'll spur more accordingly. You know, it's really kind of exciting stuff that's happening east of downtown and some new developments there. But, you know, the core is struggled a little bit. And even some of the multifamily development has been slower to lease up, slower to achieve the rents. Obviously, COVID and the protests and all of that play into that effect. And then, you know, I'm glad to hear, David, you say it extends south of Broadway, because we've accumulated some property south of Broadway. Yep. And having spent 25 years in Old Louisville, you know, we loved that neighborhood. We would have stayed there for forever, you know, close to the university. I used to love to be able to walk through campus at lunchtime, that kind of stuff. But we think downtown's got a lot, you know, to look forward to.
In a good market that we've experienced since 2012, 2013 in a run-up, we always as a city start to attract out-of-town buyers, institutional buyers, and this has been a pattern in downtown Louisville over the last number of years. As things start to get a little dicey, interest rates go up, liquidity goes down, and there becomes challenges. Those same people aren't quite as on the pulse of Louisville as local owners and operators are. And so I think that you're starting to see in downtown a real opportunity that exists in a cycle and in patterns, and that's where out-of-town owners have come in, paid a lot for buildings. The downtown value has maybe gone down, and now there's opportunities for redevelopment and adaptive reuse of buildings. We've been looking at multiple in the downtown market, whether it's taking office building to hotel, whether it's taking office buildings to residential, converting some of the office buildings to even retail on lower floors. So I think that the opportunities are there. One of the great things about this city is our historic fabric and the ability to be able to use historic tax credits that the state has recently increased to help to do just that. And so, you know, my upbringing was around historic redevelopment of buildings in downtown Louisville and then all through Old Louisville and all the way down here to U of L. And so those opportunities exist. They're going to continue to exist, but it's not right in front of you. It's not, okay, let's take this office building that's having some vacancy and having challenges and figure out how to make it better office. It's looking at just, you know, what we like to do. How do we bring, you know, not just the work, but the live and the play into it? So those opportunities are there, and we've got to figure out how to make them happen.
Absolutely. Well, you touched on having some surplus buildings to play with, so I thought I'd bring some stats just again to frame the conversation. The pre-pandemic statistics for vacancy in the office buildings. So this is not what Chris's expertise is. It's not multifamily, not mixed use. These are the towers. These are office buildings. We recently put out a report that combined all of the buildings of size. So we normally just report on Class A and Class B as a separate category. And this is the first time we've combined the two and said it's basically a high rise, even though we have some short high rises, but it's buildings that are of a certain height. And that subset of buildings, which is 9 buildings, represents 4.5 million square feet, so a significant amount of square footage. In the end of 2019, the vacancy rate for that subset was 18.6%. As of fourth quarter of last year, it's 31.9%. So a dramatic change in occupancy. The lease rate, surprisingly, has only dropped about 50 cents a foot. The average was $18.76 4 years ago and $18.22 today. And that's pretty consistent. If you look at the stats, you would think that the price of downtown office space would have fallen off the table, but it really hasn't. Prices are holding up. It's getting very expensive to put new tenants in because of the cost of construction and the inflation that's occurred, so landlords need to hold the rates up to be able to make those investments. So looking at just the Class A buildings, which would exclude some of the B towers, 17.2 to 25.4%. Class B has gone from 14.4 to 26. So pretty dramatic jumps in vacancy, and that's really, you know, I think the purpose of this topic for today is how is remote working and how has the pandemic changed the way downtowns are being utilized.
David, can you explain Class A versus Class B
Sure.
and what that distinction is, just for people understanding that?
You bet. Class A buildings, it's very subjective, but basically the newer buildings or buildings that have been maintained at a very high level that are in a Class A location. So in downtown Louisville, it's going to be, even though they're 1970s vintage buildings, we still track the PNC Tower at 5th and Main as a Class A building. The old PNC Plaza, which is now 500 West Jefferson, we track as a Class A building. It's had a significant investment in the common areas here in recent years. And without that investment, it might have been, you know, trailing towards a Class B property. Clearly, the Dome building, as people refer to it, it was developed by Hines, that's housed a variety of anchor tenants, is a Class A building. That's our newest tower, Class A tower, built in 1992. There's some smaller structures like the Zermed project that the Weylands were involved in that's also a quality building that's newer than that. LG&E building was built in the late 80s. That's in the Class A category. Some of the Class B buildings that would show up in this subset would be the Schneider project on Main Street. You'd have one Riverfront Plaza, Waterfront Plaza. Those are 1960s and 70s vintage, and they were really built to be B buildings. They weren't built to be highly amenitized and first-class projects. They're meant to be a value offering in the marketplace. So that's really the difference, and it is very subjective. When you get out to the suburbs, you know, the location can really drive it as much as quality construction. Let's talk about project viability. You know, what is the relationship of cost to develop, the interest rate environment today, market and rental rates that you can achieve? Are those in sync right now to be able to make the numbers work to do projects, or are we in a spot where things just aren't lining up right now?
From our perspective, it's challenging to get things to line up right now. And so a lot of times it comes down to what are the additional things in a capital stack besides equity, you know, normal cash equity and bank debt. Like, what else can we layer in? So historic tax credit projects, we're pushing several of those forward this year because then that tax credit equity helps fund that gap that we have in that capital stack. But without those historic tax credits or some sort of other incentive structure, it's really hard from what we're seeing to get just pure market rate deals to pencil.
What I would say is our costs have doubled in the last 7 years. And if you think about that, you know, basically the hard costs, you know, that's, the rents haven't doubled. The rents have gone up a lot, you know, so maybe too fast, and I'm worried about how that's, you know, pressuring people and families and individuals as the rent keeps going up. And then when we got hit, you know, in the last 14, 18 months with interest rates going up, well, that just, you know, sort of blew it totally out. So the projects that we're starting and getting done are kind of, you know, you're wedging in, just like you said. Maybe there's a little bit of soft money in it, or maybe there's some incentive, or, you know, we bought the land a couple of years ago at a pretty good price, or you have to go back and renegotiate the land, or, you know, what can we value engineer out of the property to make the cost work? But it's not easy. It's not easy at all in this environment to do that. And so, you know, and in the housing side, you know, it's funny, you talked about hotels and, oh, are we overbuilt? And the answer is no, we're underbuilt. Well, it's the same thing in the multifamily side. We're way undersupplied, but because people drive around in the last couple of years have been kind of, if you go back maybe 2 years, there was a lot of starts, a lot of new construction. And so people see new construction in volumes they hadn't seen before, so they automatically think, oh, we're oversupplied, we're just building too many apartments. But the reality is rents have been going up because we're not delivering enough apartment units, and that is not going to change. Another problem we have is 20 years ago, you probably supplied 3 or 4 single-family houses for every apartment unit you supplied. Today, it might be the opposite of that. I really don't know, but it's hard to develop subdivisions. You know, you have out in the suburbs, well, we don't want to extend roads, we don't want to extend sewers, we don't want this here, so we're not building enough houses. Well, where are people going to live? Then they got to live in apartments. Apartments are still hard to build, but it's a lot easier to build 300 apartments. It's a lot easier to find a place to build 300 apartments than it is to find a place to build 300 houses.
That makes sense.
As it relates to downtown specifically, yes, the viability is tough. You know, we have a challenge on the cost side, as Chris has mentioned. You know, everybody wants to say, oh, costs are going to come down, material costs are going to come down, labor costs are going to come down. I don't know how you're going to start paying people less. I don't know how, the material costs are going to come down. Costs are what they are. So ultimately, what's the demand? And what can you drive at the top line from a revenue perspective? And that's where the viability is challenging right now. Downtown Louisville was on a major upward swing when you go back to the Yum Center originally opening, and then you go forward and the convention center gets a $300 million overhaul. You have projects. 4th Street Live goes into a real renaissance and a boom, and you had so many good things happening, and unfortunately, as a community now, we're faced with this post-pandemic world where downtown Louisville, by one study, is the second worst in a subset in terms of how we've come back after the pandemic, in terms of just numbers of people in our downtown versus where we were in 19 and where we are today. So you've got that, and you've got the social unrest that we were faced with. And so the only way to bring that back is through local development, local people who really have a passion and care about it. And it's going to come down to now figuring out where the opportunity is. So the opportunities come, can you buy it right? Okay, can you buy it to where your basis is at a point where you can start to make the construction numbers work to deliver the product? Can you get an incentive? We've talked about historic tax credits. There's, other programs that are out there that we'll talk about, but some ones that Mariah and I have both looked into are tourism incentives now with the bourbonism going on and attracting people there. And then ultimately, when you look at basis, you look at your incentives, then you look to see, okay, how unique of a project can I deliver to deliver these greater than market rents? Because you're only as good as your market when it comes down to it. So it's all that chicken and the egg, David. We were close, very close. And it's, what are the services? Grocery stores, the convenience stores, the Walgreens, the CVS's, the lifestyle concepts for downtown. You combine that with the daytime population of the work, and you combine that with living, that's 24/7. And we were getting really close, and now we're faced with this tough time, and it's time to bring it back, and we can.
It is interesting. I think back in 07, 08, where we had the housing crisis, we were really moving forward with fleur-de-lis condominiums. Todd Blue had delivered a condominium project on Market Street, and then nobody could sell their house to move into the condo that they wanted to buy, and so we kind of hit the brakes pretty hard then. And then I agree, Colin, we were absolutely on a roll as we cruised into the pandemic. Things were looking as good in downtown as they probably ever have. Maybe not office occupancy, but the landscape of just retail.
The Omni
foot
Hotel
traffic
comes in out of Dallas and
huge.
puts a signature hotel in Moxie, and
right.
all those just.
Yeah. So we've had the momentum. We've got to get it back.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the unrest of 2020 and the scenes from the news. The buildings are boarded up, and how do you get the local population beyond that? What is that still a cloud, do you think, that's hanging over the downtown from driving demand into the office buildings and into the other projects?
I think it's a cloud, but I think we're all responsible. Grab your wife, grab your family, grab your kids. Let's come downtown. It's funny, even during the pandemic, we came downtown, we stayed at the Distill, we walked down the street. If you were that part of Broadway when supposedly nobody was downtown, there are people coming for bourbon tours. There are things to do.
Oh, yeah.
And really, why do you need to get on a plane and fly halfway across the country when we really do have a lot of things going for us here? And I think we're all responsible for this. I have a friend of mine that when we go to lunch, somebody will suggest Dooley. He goes, "Nope, we're going downtown," And so you get out to the east end of town, and some people would have no difference what the difference between Dooley and downtown
That's
is.
right.
But I think it's all of our responsibility, and it really is a good time. There really are things going on. If you walk this city, the architecture, the cast irons, the We're in the old Madrid building. It's a beautiful building. We were talking about the Henry Clay before this. There's some great old buildings, but there's some great newer buildings. And I wish there was some really newer, shiny things.
Right.
But I think the Humana building is one of the most beautiful buildings in the world. So
Yeah.
It's an excuse at this point. I mean, the lack of feeling safe or secure, in some instances, that's the case. That's the case in every place that you go to, anywhere you are in this country, if not the world. You got to be smart, but it's an excuse at this point, David. It's a trend that we have in terms of, why we'd rather work remotely and why we do the things that we're doing right now. And the reality is that it is up to us as Louisvillians and people who live here to get downtown, because the energy feels different. It's different than any place that you can get in town. But I think it's more of an excuse, and then I think it's people talking about it and then manifesting it in their mind.
Yeah, I remember, so I moved back to Louisville in 2009 after having lived in downtown Boston for 6 years, and I was in London, England for a year before that. So I moved back to Louisville, and I got an apartment downtown, and you just started hearing the rhetoric about, even in 2009, like downtown's not safe. Well, then you look at the crime reports, and downtown's actually one of the safest areas of the city. And there's nothing to do. Well, there is. You've got the KPA at that point. They were moving the Yum Center. People were upset about the Yum Center going downtown because people didn't want to go downtown because they were worried about traffic. If anybody's been on Ring Road, there is no worse traffic than Ring Road. So it was just all these kinds of things. And I think the Yum Center coming downtown and some other things brought people from the suburbs of Louisville into downtown that hadn't been there before, and they realized that, hey, you can go to the bar before the game, and hey, you can do, XYZ, and you can get dinner, and this is actually a pretty cool place to come down and walk the bridge. And so we're gaining that momentum, and then I think 2020 just set us back again. There is a very interesting dynamic in Louisville that I personally haven't seen in another city, and I'm sure it's there, but we have a group of very strong-minded folks, mostly in the suburbs of Louisville, who firmly believe that there is absolutely no reason to have or support a downtown. And they're very vocal about that. And downtown needs more cheerleaders that are fighting against that, because downtowns are hugely important to the vibrance of cities. You can't be a suburb of nothing. So I do agree. I think it's everybody's responsibility. Come downtown. There's events going on all the time. There's a lot of fun stuff happening. We gotta build that momentum back where people think about, yeah, let's go downtown. Let's do something fun.
I think about the bourbon industry and what's been going on here, and you think about the sidewalks on the weekends have more people on them than they do during the week, which is the opposite of what it was for my entire career.
There is a line of like 30 people out in front of Michter's every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. It's unbelievable.
I think we almost need to film some footage of downtown, during the weekend so people can see how active and vibrant it is. Speaking of the bourbon industry, what do you think about all this money that's being spent in that arena? Do you think the spin-off effect beyond just hotel rooms is showing itself anywhere in terms of other companies trying to be next to these big distillers, or more job creation? What do y'all think about this bourbon craze that's happening?
Well, we've bet big on the bourbon craze. We're actually doing a series of boutique hotels throughout cities like Bardstown and Frankfort and Elizabethtown that are oriented towards bourbon trail tourism and trying to pull people, it's great that you come and hang out in downtown Louisville, but get out into the other parts of Kentucky for a little while as well. I think that it's important for Kentucky to continue to embrace that from the tourism aspects of it, the pure business aspects of it. Those distilleries are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into infrastructure throughout the state. They're all betting big. It's bringing a lot of money into the state, and I think that's all a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
what do people want today? Unique experiences. What's more unique than bourbon? So to me, it's this great gift Kentucky has, and really Louisville is the epicenter of bourbon because of our history. So it seems like every 3 or 4 or 5 years I end up in Napa Valley and touring wineries, and that's a great time and it's a great trip to take. Well, Louisville's a great place to come and experience the bourbon. Then you add in Kentucky Derby. So what does all that bring? So what you really want is unique events. To me, that's a lot better than, if you have some event that that 30 cities in the country have and have every week, that's great. And look, I'd love to see us get some more pro sports here. But if you think about, nobody, in my opinion, will ever, well, first of all, I won't drink bourbon if it wasn't made in Kentucky.
Right.
And I encourage all of you the same way. The Tennessee stuff, no. You want to listen to country music, go to Nashville, that's fine. But don't be drinking that Tennessee whiskey. Drink that Kentucky bourbon. So, I think that's important. And I think we have to build on that. I would love to see us embrace a little stronger music scene. I've spent a lot of time in New Orleans and I've spent a lot of time in Austin, Texas, and sometime in Nashville. And all those cities were built on entertainment and on music. Mm-hmm. And so if you could have the anchor of the bourbon and you could add the music scene to it, and we've got a vibrant music scene, but it's just kind of spread out and it's kind of nondescript. So.
Yeah, I think we're known for two things. It's horses and bourbon. If you go around, some people might say KFC, but horses and bourbon, and the horse thing happens, 1 week out of the year. The bourbon thing happens every day of the year. There was a publication that came out this year that said we were the #1 Airbnb market in the country. You can give all that credit to the bourbon industry. You're starting to see bachelor parties and bachelorette parties and reunions and things that are bringing people to Louisville on a regular basis for bourbon. And for the first time in my life, it's becoming a mainstream thing. It affects everything. So we look to attract new businesses to come to Louisville. We don't want to continue to do the same things that people are already doing here. The first thing we do is we look at a distillery. Can we take them to a distillery? Can we get them in love with Louisville? Can we get them in love with Kentucky? Can we get them in love with the heritage? That is a hook right away. We don't go to Churchill Downs because it's typically not open, but the distilleries and the bourbon, they leave with a big package of bourbon. And for the last 2 years, we have been working on some pretty signature concepts that not only are they interested in coming now and getting into that bourbon world, but they're changing their prototype and their look and their feel to come here and make it along those lines. And I think we'll start to see some of that, and we've got some of that coming along here shortly. So it affects everything. Yeah. Most importantly, it just gives us pride in our city, and it gives other people something to talk about and want to come here and keep them here.
Yeah, I agree. It's been an amazing gift to us, really, the pandemic impact on downtown. To have all these bourbon tourists here has been exceptional. Let's talk about government support for your all's efforts to make things happen in the city and more specifically downtown. I know there's a recent incentive that was announced. Why don't you talk a little bit about the regulatory environment to get projects approved and whether we're pro-growth or are we anti-growth? What are we?
I'll start out. I think that we need downtown in particular. There's been some incentives, but they pale in the reality of what is actually needed. Recently, there was a $3 million Metro Council incentive for tenant build-outs in the CBD market. To put that in perspective, $3 million, and they're talking about $30 worth of your tenant improvement allowance. We have 2 million square feet of vacant unleased space in the CBD right now. 100,000 square feet is going to eat up that $3 million right there. So there's initiatives being taken, David, but there's more that needs to be done because, again, we need to kind of turn the corner on this, and it's going to take a lot. There's other programs, that are certainly helping, and again, we We all have worked in this world of low-income tax credits and historic tax credits, and we've talked about tourism, and all those things are great. We've got TIF areas set up, especially around the arena, which is a incremental financing district that allows you to bring back the sales tax dollars that were created in that area for the projects that you're doing. The reality is that at the state level and at a city level, we need to create a lot more because Louisville is producing half the GDP in the state, and we need our downtown to be strong.
I would totally agree that the incentives we have are not enough, and we need more if we really want to build downtown. And if we really want to keep our young people here and have opportunities. But the thing I want to talk about, and I'm pretty visible on this, is our the hardest place we do business in the United States, and we work in 15 or 20 markets, is Louisville, Kentucky. And why is that? We have a Metro Council that fights everything. We have all these things going on that are just an impediment. And if we weren't a Louisville company, half our business is in Texas. The reality is if LDG was a publicly traded company, my board would make me move to Austin, Texas, and concentrate on there and stay away from Louisville, Kentucky because of how hard it is to do business, because of the fights. We've recently had, I'm 7 or 8 years into at least one zoning battle. We're 2 or 3 years into another one. We'll get something approved, and then Metro Council pulls it back and turns it down, violates their own rules. And it's a little bit, part of the problem is 26 council people. And you have a small amount of people that elect a person. So if I want to build a property in somebody's district and 300 people show up to fight it, that council person has a hard time, not going along with that small contingency or you know what the word I'm trying to say. Constituency, thank you. But we need leadership. We need to say, hey, if we don't want growth, if we want Humana and everybody else to leave town and we want to turn downtown into a farming community like Detroit or something, then we ought to say that. But if we want growth and we want our community to be strong, then we've got to lead. And the problem is it's the one neighbor that's fighting hard against something that everybody listens to, not everybody else. I mean, it's a total crime that there's not a Walmart at 18th and Broadway today. I mean, it's a total crime that people that weren't even from that neighborhood fought because they didn't think that, a store, they thought a store should be built like it was built in 1900, not how it's built in 2010 or 15 or whenever that was. I mean, the fact that we had the battle we had to build Top Golf at the mall is just, it's mind-numbing.
Yeah.
So we definitely have some issues on the zoning side of things. Fortunately, in the CBD, most of the zoning is C3. So in that small area, you've got a lot of leeway into what you can do. So your issues aren't usually zoning battles. The issues more are along the lines of the incentives. So one of the issues, when they did the arena TIF, they TIF'd the entire downtown with a few carve-outs for different projects. So
Explain a TIF, just for those that may not understand that.
So in order to finance the arena, they've passed a TIF, which meant that sales tax, property tax, employment tax, all of the taxes that are generated in that area that was TIF'd, to use the verb term of it, above the baseline year, basically goes to pay the arena authority's debt. So all of that got captured. And that was actually one of the things we went out, this was the election year back when Fisher was running for his first term of office. And we tried to talk to everyone that was running for mayor to let them know that this was not a good idea. They needed development downtown in order to help pay that TIF, that amount of money that was needed for the Arena Authority. In order to do that, you needed incentives that weren't tied up in the TIF. So we needed to look at how do you carve some of these out before they're set in stone. That didn't happen. So it's all of that money comes in, goes to the Arena Authority essentially. So that's one of the reasons we don't have extra incentives for downtown. We do have historic tax credits at the federal level, historic tax credits at the state level. Those are hugely helpful when you have a historic tax credit project. New market tax credits are extremely challenging to get, partially because of the Arena City or the Arena TIF, and they're also just challenging in general.
Right.
And then one of the things that a lot of other cities, especially the entire state of Ohio, actually passed legislation that allows their individual cities to do it, is they allow their cities to pass, they're called CRAs, and it allows them to abate property taxes within those areas for residential, commercial, really whatever the city wants to do. So when we do a multifamily project in Dayton, Ohio, I get a 15-year tax abatement for that project, for bringing those new units online. And that allows us to, again, build beyond the market. The rents aren't there to support that project, but you take that property tax piece off for the first 15 years and suddenly that project is bankable. And we don't have those incentives in Kentucky because of an issue with the state constitution. So there's actually an effort in Frankfurt this year to try to get some of that moved forward so that we can have some more of those tools in the toolbox.
Sounds good. Glad there's some progress being made or attempts to make progress. Well, believe it or not, we're coming up on our 45 minutes. We want to leave some time at the end for questions and answers. One of the questions that we'd like to wrap up with in this part of the program is we have some students out here, future real estate leaders. Why don't each of you all think about what kind of advice you might give this group about how you navigated and figured out how to succeed in the industry, and give them some feel for what they might think about it as it relates to the commercial real estate industry. Colin, why don't you start?
People ask me all the time, how do you get started in the real estate business? And I point blank, with no hesitation, start picking up trash, start working out on property, start doing the manual labor, get up on the roofs, understand properties, understand how they work. But as it relates to students in the business school, looking at a real estate minor, what we really need in this city and what we really need in real estate in general is your all's energy. We need your think like a child mentality. A think like a child mentality is, we do these projects, we run into problems. We're scared to run into that same problem again. But the beautiful thing of a new generation coming out in the workforce is they don't see those challenges, they don't see those problems because they haven't experienced them, they haven't felt them. And so, I would say to everybody interested in real estate and getting into real estate is that we need you, and we need your energy, and we need your passion. The socioeconomic class that really moves the needle in real estate is that 25 to 35-year-old, and that's where we're looking to develop projects to help attract those kind of people. And we need your ideas, we need your energy, we need your passion to come involved and be involved in what we're doing at a local level to make real estate better. Ultimately, we need to attract youth, to be here, and your youthfulness and our projects will help us do that. We need that to help attract people to come here, to attract people to want to be here, companies to come here, and then ultimately to retain them. So my biggest advice and easiest advice is we need you guys, and we need you all involved, and we would love to talk more about that.
Great. Chris?
I think real estate's the best business I know of to be in. It's construction. You get to build and create things. You can use your artistic abilities to design and do better. If you're into customer service, everybody who lives in a building, everybody who works in a building is a customer to be served. Real estate is stable. You know, the interesting thing is if we build a building today, there's a high likelihood that 100 years from now that building will still be there and will have an effect on the landscape. And so I just find that it's also a great way to create wealth. Now, it's what I will tell you, it's slow. It's slow and painful way to create wealth. But if you own real estate and you manage it and you take care of it, you know, it just kind of gives back and grows with you. And so for me, it's just a great business to be a part of.
Great. Mariah?
Yeah, I think it's a great business to be a part of, and I think it runs the gamut, as Chris said, from a job perspective. You don't have to be a finance person. You can be a customer service person. You can be a construction person. You can be more on the development side. There's so many opportunities and jobs available within that kind of overarching real estate world. I'm a biomedical engineer by training, so this was not my career path. Took a sharp left turn in 2009, but I haven't looked back. And so I think that's the other thing. It's, you know, figure out a path that you want to go on for, you know, if you're in college now, figure out a 5-year path. Just say, I'm going in this direction, and then figure it out as you go along. Everything is and continuing education is so important in the world right now. It's constantly retooling, and if there's something out there that's new that I don't know about, I go find out about it. So being open to that kind of constant learning, I think, is very important in real estate, and also important for any career that you may choose. So I am really excited about the minor here. I think that there's a lot of good foundational things that will come out of those classes that will let students know if they want to be part of this business or not, but then also kind of give them those foundational levels to then launch off of, which is going to be great.
I want to just add, real estate's a collaborative business.
Hugely.
So it really helps if you're together. And since David needs to lease some office space, come to the office, work together. But I am a real believer, and people have heard me talk before, you know, I'm not a big fan of work from home because of the disconnect. That doesn't mean you can't work from home on Tuesday afternoon, but what we find is if your job is really simple and you don't have to do anything other than these 4 tasks, work from home probably is fine. But what we find is sometimes by the coffee maker or the cafeteria at lunch, that's where the great ideas come. That's where one person helps solve somebody else's problem. What I always say is work from home prevents the old from teaching and the young from learning. So.
Well said. Well said. Well, that's great advice. We're now going to open this up to some question and answers from the audience here. Well, we'll do the answering. You all do the asking.
If you have questions, there's a microphone. Head back, go to the microphone.
Can I just stand up and talk?
No, we want to
That mic
record.
Sorry.
I was wondering if that's why they don't let me talk. If each of you could just give us your top thing of what the city could do to start bringing people downtown, and that could be people either as visitors downtown or people as in new corporations relocating to downtown, preferably from out of town and not poaching from the suburbs.
It really, the biggest economic driver in this city is the University of Louisville. 25,000 students. It's a big deal. Every company in this town needs talent. We need to find talent. We need to have talent to help us move our businesses forward. U of L is partnered to do the most successful office development in this town over the last 10 years on the East Campus at Shelbyhurst. U of L continues to make contributions and donations financially in the city, is buying and occupying buildings in downtown, and does so many great things. Quite honestly, Michael, the biggest thing that can happen is that we start making the KFC Yum Center a place that people go to in the 20,000s of people 22 times a year. And not just for that, but for the other events that happen. Because one of the things about bringing people downtown is that when you get out of the habit of coming downtown, you stop coming downtown altogether. And so once again, U of L can be at the forefront of, we have got to figure out, whether you're a U of L basketball fan or not, how to get people in that arena and cheering that program on and creating that pride from the city that emanates across the country. And we, once again, become the #1 college basketball market in the country.
Yeah, it's true.
Gee, I wish Humana would bring all their employees back downtown. That'd be #1 if I had a wish. The other thing is, gee, I'd love to attract headquarters downtown, but from out-of-state companies. I don't think we're going to see that. We might see some more Louisville-based companies move downtown. But I think back to when I was a kid, if you went to Oxmoor Mall, it really was just a bunch of stores. There might have been one restaurant there, and I think you could walk through. Maybe it was the mall, and there was a Chick-fil-A inside that they gave away the free samples or something. And now you go to Oxmoor Mall, it's really an entertainment venue. There's Top Golf, I think they're getting ready to open a mini golf, there's a bunch of different restaurants. And I think downtown has got to reimagine itself as an entertainment district and a reason to come downtown, related to the bourbon tourism, related to U of L basketball, related to the unique opportunities we have downtown. And when we get that right, that's when I think we're going to see downtown. But
Music scene too.
music scene.
Yeah.
My thing was, if I could do one thing, it'd be, if you have live music in your nightclub, you don't pay taxes, or some kind of incentive. Because what happens, and I love music, but what I love is to go to a place where there are 6 bars, where there are bands in each of the bars, and when I walk in the first bar, and the band's okay, but, oh, let's go next door. That's, to me, a really good time. If I go to Germantown to see a band, and I don't like the band, then am I going to drive down to East Main Street? Then am I going to drive out to the East End? Not so
Right.
much.
Right.
One thing, that's hard. I agree with everything that they just said. I think as part of that, we talked earlier about the safety issues, whether those are perception or reality. I think that one of the things that the city can really do immediately is just really focus on how do you make downtown just feel safer? How do you increase a presence of ambassadors, which they have done over the past year, but how do you make that so that there is just a sense of safety when you go downtown? Improving the pedestrian experience. So a lot of the great cities that you go to when you walk around, it feels good to walk around. And there's areas of Louisville that have that, but then we have a lot of kind of missing teeth, I'll call it. And so making it a more cohesive experience for the people that are walking around downtown and bar hopping to different places to go listen to music or going to the Center or whatever that is. I think those are some very tangible things that would make a big difference.
I'll add to that. I think it's a collaborative effort between the Louisville Downtown Partnership, which is a public-private enterprise that's really focused on just improving the downtown, and then the city. There's a lot of these safety issues, the panhandling, homelessness, they exist everywhere. But some cities are doing a better job of dealing with those. But if you can focus on those 3 things, cleanliness, the little things matter. We've got to get our act together and start thinking of ourselves as a first-class city and clean the place up. When you see a mess, we all need to walk by and pick up something, put it in the trash if you're walking down a sidewalk in downtown Louisville. But it's going to take a team effort, and it's a big lift, because without the safety issue, perception or otherwise, and we're saying perception, somebody was shot and killed, multiple gunshot wounds at 4th Street Live this week. So it's not just perception. You run that story on the news, and you're set back another year to try to get the East End customer to come downtown for dinner. So it's real. We've got to get our house in order, and that means the mayor and the police force and everybody working together to to demonstrate that it's a different time than it has been over the last few years. Any other questions?
So you mentioned that costs to develop property in downtown area have gone up, doubled in the last 7 years. What's driving these costs to go up? Is it regulatory? Is it all labor? Are there things that can be done, or is this just a lost cause?
It's not just downtown, that's everywhere. So construction costs have skyrocketed in the last few years, mostly due to inflation and supply chain issues. There is conversation that, material costs are gonna come down. I'm not keeping my fingers crossed that that's actually gonna pass through to my general contractor contracts. So I don't know that there is an answer necessarily.
A lot of work that has gone on over an extended period of time creates demand for construction and drives pricing up. And once that construction pricing gets to those levels, and then you throw in complications of supply chain and other things, how do you revert it back? I mean, it's just natural forces and causes and costs and, increase in cost of living.
I totally agree. What I think you're gonna see is, I said the last 7 years, costs are going like that. Maybe the next couple of years it goes like that, but I don't think you're gonna see it go down. And so, as a developer, if you can make a property work, if you make your project pencil out, go ahead and do it. If you're just gonna sit around and wait for costs to come down, you're gonna be here for a long time.
Thank you.
All right, first of all, thank you guys for being here. And the question I have is, how do you address concerns of gentrification or the pricing out of current Louisville residents from their own neighborhoods?
What was the end of that?
Pricing out current residents out of their neighborhood.
So, I'm probably like gonna be the guy that everybody's gonna go home and go, he's kind of a jerk, but, gentrification is something we have to look at. It's something you have to pay attention to. But the reality is we use it as a veil to try to stop development. And most of you here are in the business school. If you took Economics 101, and what I remember from those, and Patrick, it hadn't changed, has it? Supply and demand. So if you increase if you increase demand and supply and all that stuff, prices will adjust. And so I think you have to be conscious of not tearing down existing things that, provide affordable housing. But on the other hand, all new supply to me helps. So we're primarily in the affordable housing arena. I care a lot about that. But every time Colin or Mariah develop a new cool property, even at a market rate or a higher rent, that provides supply to the market. And that's where people get squeezed out. The other thing I will say is, having worked in West Louisville since 1991, is there's this thing about how home ownership creates value over time, and I do agree with that. But if you bought a house in 1991 and it's worth the same today as it was 30 years ago because there's no new development and nothing driving price values, you're not creating wealth. And so it's a really tough question because there's not a simple answer to it. But sometimes I think people that want to stop new things from happening use the term gentrification to be a roadblock instead of really looking at what are the right answers and what are the right problems.
Yeah, I don't think we ever start a project and say, we just want to get like the biggest rent possible. We honestly start it out and say, what are our costs and how do we get a rent that can make the investment work? And the reality is that you've seen all new development in the housing space that's been of a Class A or a nicer, simply because they've got to achieve these higher rents because their costs are so elevated to begin with. And I think it's all circular in that we've got to solve some of the supply and construction costs. And so you're starting to see new technology. I know that there's an architect here in the room that we've worked with a bunch, trying to create modular type construction and easier construction to be able to lower the costs. But I think Mariah or Chris, anytime they're building a project, like they would like to start at the lowest rent they can, because that creates the biggest opportunity for rentership. But a lot of what you've seen recently is purely pushed by cost.
I'll talk about, our Metro Council just passed a displacement ordinance. Nobody knows what it really says and what it's going to do, but it only applies to things that are incentivized. So it only applies to me as affordable housing, or you as a historic developer, or if you do some other government incentive. Well, guess what? Normally, we're going to supply the lower end, which is going to keep costs down. So if somebody comes in and wants to do purely market rate, they're not subject to the same displacement ordinance. So it doesn't make any sense to me, if this is a problem, that it should apply to everybody. And what are the rules going to be? And again, supply and demand. The more supply we have, the better prices are going to be over time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Great question.
Gotcha. Thank you all for being here today. I had a question about sort of the difference between daytime and nighttime activities in downtown. Like, I know that usually we think of bar hopping as a nighttime activity, and then museums are a lot of times the daytime activity, but places like the Science Center have started to mix it, where, they have nighttime activities. Is this good for real estate downtown, or do you think not, like mixing them together sort of takes away from the real estate property and the value?
I think the more you have going on, and the more that the businesses think that they can expand their opening hours, it's fantastic. Now, I will say, and I might get stuff thrown at me, and you can just call me old, the 2 to 4 a.m. liquor license thing, nothing good happens between 2 and 4 a.m., so stuff like that makes me nervous. But yeah, I mean, the Science Center being open later, new dinner restaurants opening for lunch, all of that activity I think is great. Bourbon drinking has become, like I said, literally 9 a.m. Michter's Wednesdays, line out the door. So that's apparently an all-day, everyday thing these days. I love it when the convention center has volleyball tournaments coming in now, and you see all the teams walking all over downtown. That's happening on a regular basis. So there's a lot of energy, and the more activity you can drive over a larger number of hours, the better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, could you comment on the waterfront development and how it fits into your thinking?
Sure. So waterfront, you mean the phase 4 moving to the west? Yeah. Well, the waterfront opened up downtown to the river, which I think is fantastic. It's a great park. The bridge added a whole new level of dynamics.
The walking bridge.
The walking bridge, yep. I think waterfront still needs to figure out how to turn that into more of an economic development impact in Louisville, like you see in Southern Indiana. I mean, Southern Indiana has so many restaurants and businesses that were generated by that bridge, and we have Pig Beach, and that's about it. So hopefully we can figure out how to incentivize some more things to happen around there. I think the phase 4 development is fantastic. It's under construction. The part of it that's more towards the Science Center, I don't know the opening date of it, but moving that to the west and connecting into Portland is going to make a huge impact on that neighborhood. And I think there are discussions, we'll see if they're actually able to get it done, of trying to take one of the other railroad bridges on that west side so that you could actually do a full loop around, which would be really cool.
That'd be great.
Yeah, the prettiest and most opportunistic part of any urban setting is typically waterfront. Waterfront of all types. Louisville is particularly challenged because 64 literally cuts our downtown from our waterfront. In a perfect world, you would see 64 disappear in that section and go around the backside, but knowing that that's logistically almost impossible at this point, all this waterfront development and bringing downtown to the river is so, so important for this city.
Absolutely. How are we doing on time for those that are in control here? All right, thank you, Steve. Yes, ma'am.
Are there any city initiatives you support that would save the city from the common pitfalls of a tourism economy?
What are the common pitfalls of the tourism?
Like a lot of national chains coming in and a lot more, people coming for bachelor and bachelorette parties and being drunk and disorderly and generally making a mess. Hawaii, for example.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Don't they?
I think the hope is that activity breeds activity, and hopefully good activity will come, especially in our circumstance, because it's not just a bar or restaurant. We're seeing actual businesses where they're manufacturing a product, distilling the bourbon. And so I think that's a little different twist to the Nashville kind of honky-tonk scene where they've been overrun down there. Maybe if we had the bachelorettes instead of the bachelors, maybe they'd be overrunning us as well on all the pedal taverns and stuff. But I think at this point, we're in a position to take all comers. Yeah. All activity is good activity for us in downtown Louisville right now.
We don't do any Airbnbs. I've done some hotel stuff. It does seem like that's an area, and I'm not well enough versed with what Louisville's laws, but I know we're passing some laws, and I've been critical of Metro Council thus far, but it does seem like, some control of that. I do understand that you don't want to go into a traditional residential neighborhood and allow bachelorette parties to take over a street, that kind of thing. I think Louisville's unique in that we do have, for a city of our size, we do have great restaurants, a great food scene. Bourbon sort of drives that. And so hopefully we will be diligent on, having good restaurants, not just the chain restaurants. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and if you'll come downtown and eat, then that'll encourage those restaurants to be there.
Yeah, that's right. We'll take a chain downtown. Come on.
It's a bit speculative, but going back to the conversation about attractions that will potentially lure people downtown, you guys mentioned the Derby and the spirits industry and possibly adding music in the mix, but has the possibility of a professional sports team ever come up?
I would love an NBA team. If anybody can get that done, that'd be fantastic.
Well, if you guys didn't know, as of 2016, Louisville is the third largest city in America without a professional sports team in any of the major leagues.
Yeah. We do have soccer. So support the one sports team that we have. That would be the first part for getting to another one.
I think a pro sports franchise of one of the bigger professional leagues would be a game changer. Mm-hmm. It was the first thing that I came, after college and started to meet with Todd Blue and Jonathan Blue and talked about this. A lot of people have talked about it. I think 2016 would have been a much better time for us to jump into it. The reality is that now that you've gone through the TV rights and the collective bargaining and all this stuff, it's a money issue. And so ultimately the cost of an MLS men's team now is, in the $300 to $500 million range. And when you talk about the NBA, those franchises are in the $2 billion to $4 billion range. It's a lot of money, and right now our focus needs to be around luring a few more corporations to town in order to make that possible. But certainly pro sports would be great. I think that there's a little concern about the financial support behind it right now and really getting somebody to take it on.
I've thought about this a lot lately, and so one thing is, we're not going to get Formula One, but could we figure out how to do street racing in downtown? One weekend a year we close the streets and have some kind of race. These traveling teams, the Norton, because Russ Cox always yells at me if I don't say the Norton Indoor Track Facility. I think that's really good. It's bringing traveling teams, and that's obviously not pro sports, and then lastly, when U of L basketball is at its best, and we're bringing 22,000 people to every game, that's better than most NBA teams draw. It might not be as many games, but it does bring an impact. And so, yes, I would love for one of the students here to become a billionaire and buy an NFL team and move it to downtown Louisville. And I've got a site for you. But short of that, what things can we do to encourage what we have?
Yeah, and I think that's we have 2 professional soccer teams. The women's team is at the top level. We actually had the NCAA Final Four for Division I men's soccer in Louisville, and I'm not even sure that anybody really knew about it. I was at the games and there wasn't a good attendance. We've got the women's women's March Madness coming this year. So we got to get out and support what we do have, because we have a lot of great sporting events that are coming to the city. So step 1 is, support what we have, and then hope for one of you to be a billionaire. I like that.
Do you guys think for the amount that sorry.
I think we're done.
Okay.
I said one last question. So I want to thank our speakers here, and I hope you guys show up February 13th for our next event. Thank you guys very much.